And away we go, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in the world as it is today. It is 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time where I am, myself and my variety of felines that I am taking care of. And welcome again. It is Friday, September 1st already. Isn't that right, Kitty? Friday, September 1st. As we get into the news today, taking a look at some of the people that are joining us on Coffee Talk, that is at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, or Prepper University on YouTube. Say hello, everybody. For those of you who can see, I've got all these kittens with me, crawling all over the place and messing up my keyboard, because that's what they do. And I can also be found on fistfulofradio.com, fistfulofradio.com, where you can find me Monday through Thursday at 4 and Friday at noon, evidently. And I'll take a look at some of the people that are here. I try to, again, read as many comments as I can, so that people who are listening and not able to watch can follow along. And I see Helter is here, Dragon is here, Keisha, Delo, PV is here, Urban. Who else we got? Ali is here. Nathan is here. Boogers, Fluke Man, John Houston the Cat Shepherd. Spectre is here from Texas, he says. Armored Ghost, Feline Friday. Yes, indeed. It sure feels that way, doesn't it? And DIY Specialist, what do you think about those backpack armor panels for school kids? If you have a child who is in an inner city school where you think there is the potential for something like that to happen, couldn't hurt. It couldn't hurt. Keep in mind, though, that you can't use a traditional backpack in most schools anymore. They require you to use those transparent backpacks. You have to get the translucent, clear plastic backpacks in a lot of schools now. So that may not be permitted by the school. And you have that whole issue to deal with. And then Armored says, do you think cough, cough measures will return, or that's very unlikely to be as bad as they were? And he's talking about the C virus pandemic lockdowns. I know they will try. I believe they will try, because that's what they do. That's what they do. They want to lock us up again. They've been leaning in that direction. They just haven't been able to do it. And Bam says, I have a 3A soft panel in my backpack. And also, there's Dusty sitting in the chair. And I've got a couple more around here somewhere lurking around being a nuisance. But that's okay. They're kittens, and it doesn't matter. They can be as pesky as they want, and it doesn't bother me at all. So let's see here as we get into some of the news for the day. Some interesting things here. I'm going to show you something. I think this has a video clip. This has been happening a lot, but this particular instance was this took place yesterday, and it says, who is this? Brett Bart. Flash mob. Wow, these ads are just annoying. Flash mob steals thousands of dollars in power tools from California Home Depot. Again, Home Depot and Lowe's all over the country has been getting hit by flash mob robberies. This is nothing new, but this one was yesterday, and they do have some film footage. So we're going to read this real quick, and I'm going to show you some of the film. I'm going to show you the film clip and discuss this a little bit, because there's something in particular that struck my mind while I was watching this. And Paul Potato is here. Thanks for joining us today. And the article goes on. A flash mob stole thousands of dollars in power tools from a Home Depot in Long Beach, California, continuing the epidemic of organized retail theft. Video of the incident began circulating on the internet, which showed masked thieves at a Home Depot loading up on boxes that appear to be Red Milwaukee brand power tools into carts or their arms and leaving the store. 2 employees in orange aprons can be seen standing nearby, seemingly not sure how to respond. There's more than that. I think there's more than just 2 people in this video clip. It goes on to say, Signal Hill Police Department Lieutenant Kelly Krieger confirmed via email on Monday that officers were dispatched to the store around 6:03 p.m. Sunday and took a report of a robbery that involved approximately 7 unknown males who stole $5,000 worth of power tools, noted the outlet. The robbery in Long Beach comes amid a severe crime wave in the state of California, where multiple department stores have fallen prey to these types of smash and grab robberies. As Breitbart News reported this week, masked thieves in Pasadena, California, looted $500,000 in merchandise from a jewelry store after pepper spraying the owner, Sam Babican. On and on and on and on. And this is the clip, and I'm going to let you look at it here really quickly as we plow into this, and then I'll make my point. Armit says, flash mob of future doctors and engineers, I'm sure. They just need textbook money. I know, they're just trying to get by. Reparations, man. Urban says, I noticed Home Depot has begun stocking pricey inventory of the Milwaukee brand tools, which are quite high-end. Not surprising that specific brand was targeted. And then Fluke says, I just saw a cat wiggled while doing, and then, oh, what are you telling me that for? I don't want to see that. Here we go. Here's the...
It's brand new. You know, I got a full piece.
Yeah.
How did they even get that?
Yeah, hey. I don't know about you, but I think I counted, including the person holding the phone, about 5 employees, right? 4 males and a female, because I heard a female voice, and I'm going to assume, hi, buddy. I'm going to assume that's the person that's behind the camera. Plus customers, because you saw some customers standing around there as well. And that's the way it goes. I see Stephen is here, Stephen or Stefan Riley. Zane is here. And Helter said the police in San Francisco won't prosecute anyone who steals item valued at less than $900. From what I've read and heard on the internet, there's a lot more than $900 there. And Dragon says the problem is with the state of California. There are no consequences for the actions. There are so many rules, but nobody's willing to punish anyone. And it goes a little deeper than that. And because this bothers me for several reasons. It bothers me for several reasons. And the primary reason that it bothers me is because looking back, it wasn't that long ago this would not be tolerated. And speaking from my own retail experience, as I see the catch up a couple of these comments here, and I'll tell you my story. Bam says they were too stupid to pack the cart full. Yeah, well, they looked like they were being pretty casual about it too, like they knew they wouldn't be interfered with. PV says this is what you get with slackjaw leftist policies. Stefan says you said my name right the second time. Okay. And Zane says out here in California, we have a lot of shoplifting indeed. Now, when I was working in retail a million years ago, actually it wasn't even that long ago, in the 90s and the very early 2000s, it wouldn't be tolerated. I've had many fights with customers who were shoplifting. I've slammed people on the floor. I've pushed people. I've knocked people out. I've dragged people out of the store, kicking and screaming and throwing them on the sidewalk with no consequences. Because the attitude of, if I was an employee and it was a manager that was in charge, or the district manager, or whoever, the attitude basically was you were defending property. And if the police had to get involved, the attitude of the police was you were defending property. It was permitted. Now it's not. Now, if you try to defend the store, you're in trouble. You probably have to go to court. You're probably going to lose your job. As a customer, even, this is the other part that gets me. As a customer, even. And as an example, what was it? Urban Renewals, which is a thrift store, that's kind of like, Goodwill or Salvation Army or anything like that. And this was again in the mid 90s. I saw a woman get robbed in the store. Essentially, she didn't know she was getting robbed. I was in there shopping, and this was on Brighton Avenue in Alston, Massachusetts. I don't know if the store is still there or not. That's beside the point. I was in the aisle, and there's this old lady, and her shopping cart's in front of her, and I'm looking through the clothing, and I saw a hand come from between the clothing rack, right out of the middle of the aisle. A hand just comes out and goes in her purse in the shopping cart and comes back out again like this. And I like, what the hell? So I went around and I look on the other side. This guy puts something in his pocket, goes about his business. So I went up to the front of the store just as an example, because like I said, I can't condone the idea that customers stood around and watched this, employees stood around and watched this, because this is not the generation I came from. Went to the front of the store, asked if there was a manager there, and told the manager, "You see that guy down there?" and described him. He just stole something out of that woman's purse. Call the police because I'm not going to let him out of the store. And I didn't. When he came around and he tried to leave, and I blocked the exit, I would not let him out. I grabbed him and I held him and gave him a really hard time. And the police actually came pretty quickly because there was construction going on across the street. And I don't know if Massachusetts still does this, because I haven't been there in a long time. I left there in like 2000 or 2001, something like that. I forget. But the law was that if you had construction going on out in the street, there had to be a police officer on duty. And he heard the call on his radio and he was like, "Oh, it's just across the street. Let me go look." So he came pretty quick. And there was some issues because the woman he stole from didn't speak English. She was Russian, and they had to find somebody to translate and explain it. And she was scared because it was a cop and, Russian police and all that. She didn't want to talk to him at first. But then, yeah, he did steal out of her purse and they took him away. Didn't even question me. They're like, "Hey, thanks a lot. That was great." I mean, Urban Renewal even offered me a damn job. But that was then. Crap like that wasn't tolerated. Shoplifting, come here. Give me what you got. Get the hell out of here. You drag them out of there, kicking and screaming. You fight. I fought, like I said, I fought with employees. I mean, not employees. I have actually fought with employees, but that's another story. But I've fought with customers, slammed them on the floor, all sorts of things. And, defending property, defending other employees, things like that. And now to see these people, what's their solution? Wow, this is incredible. You see this? Oh my God. That's how everything's handled now. And there'll be no solution. Nothing's going to be accomplished. It makes me sick. It's like no more alpha males. Bad. No more alpha males. No more beta males. It's kind of like celebrities now. You have your A-listers and B-listers. That's gone. Now you got C, D, E, F, and G listers and on down the list of all these wannabes and washed up people trying to make comebacks. And it's the same thing with men. You don't have alpha and beta males anymore. You have kappa, gamma, and delta males and on down the list. But at the same time, they're hobbled because of state laws and regulations and because of the rules of the company, because of those states' laws and regulations, where if they did try to defend themselves, if they did try to resist, if they did try to do anything, they'd probably lose their job and maybe even get convicted. Let me catch up some of these comments here. Urban says, "I suppose that's one way the communists in charge of blue cities can redistribute the wealth to the less by using an army of hired criminals. Does the police even follow the tools to the fence? Who knows?" Freedom for All says, "The usual suspects." Oh, thanks for that. You heard the crash. I got cats over here causing problems. And Stefan says, "Damn, man. Indeed." Keisha said, "My son used to work security at Walmart, and while he was there, they stopped security from touching the shoplifting person." Yeah, right. Me and me and another employee and the guy from loss prevention when I was working at Bradley's tackled the guy because he was there by himself. Stefan says you sound like a good worker. Sometimes it depends on what the job is, I guess. Zane said in Walmart, I've seen everything behind plexiglass. That's pickpocket, not robbery. Well, you know what I mean. He stole from the woman. And yeah, I know what it means, Zane. Urban says a couple of ladies were fired by Lulamon for calling the police during a similar situation with a small theft mob. That was in Georgia. Update, Lulamon stands by its decision. Of course. And Armand says corporations demand that their employees allow theft to happen. They don't want the liability. And Stefan says he likes to hear the stories of me fighting with people. Oh, no. And PV says one wonders how long a store will be able to tolerate such losses. Well, Lowe's is closing a lot of locations now in certain areas. That I saw a blurb on that a little while ago. And Zane says if you even touch someone, it's in a threatening way, it's assault. Armand says, why can't Californians reverse a law that basically legalizes theft? Population can't be bothered. Hey, the lawmakers are the ones in control, and they do what they want. And Legend says it's just sad these days seeing people with their phones and everyone is turning into a hypocrite. And Zane said you'll go to jail for being violent and not the thief. And Armand says it's insane they've allowed theft to go as long as they have. And Derp says, hello, Derp is here. Thanks for joining us, Derp. As I try to catch up some of the comments, Legend says my favorite women who think men wear tank tops outside in summer time is dumb, yet they wear yoga pants to work. Women shouldn't wear yoga pants in public. You know why they do it. And then if you sexualize them, they get mad. Fluke Man says if you got into a shoplifter now, the cops probably arrest you, and the cops will be like, we don't like doing this, but we have a job to do. Yeah, that's the excuse. Like when in one of your videos, a priest got arrested. That's right. The priest in Florida who's giving sandwiches to homeless people. They arrested him like a dozen times. He's like in his 80s too. Helter said, under the present administration, this is acceptable and these people won't be charged. However, a patriotic old person shouting at them to stop could be imprisoned for years without trial. Armored says cats causing insurance claims. Yeah, I know. They're bouncing around in here, knocking things down, getting in the way. It's okay. And Bigfoot is here. Thanks for joining us today, Bigfoot. Yeah, assault is threatening language, says Zane. Yeah, people can do that. We saw also during the pandemic when someone coughing or sneezing in public, they could get an assault charge. Armin says, how long before Scott Adams is mugged outside his house? Any day now. And Urban said it's quite a good strategy, actually force the stores to leave the hood, force property prices down, buy up entire swaths of crappy land to make a 15-minute city out of it. Indeed. And Stefan says they arrest people for helping homeless people now. Why? Because it's illegal to feed them. And that's what he does. He's been doing it forever because he's a priest, and that's part of his ministry is the homeless ministry. And you need to only feed them in authorized places. So if he goes out and gives them sandwiches, he's breaking the law, and they arrest him. And I've seen the video, and that's why I talk about it sometimes, because it really pisses me off. The sheriff's deputy is like, well, we hate to have to do this because we understand, but we have our orders. Yeah, you hate to have to do it, but you still are. You're still arresting him, even though it's unethical. So there you go. And you think the police and the sheriff's offices and all these other law enforcement and everything are going to stand down and defend the Constitution if the government goes completely in left field with everybody? Keep thinking that. Here's one for you. You'll love this. Biden gets lost, and this is from Rare. Rare is the news site. Biden gets lost, turns back on podium during speech. He got lost. It says, during his appearance, President Joe Biden delivered remarks today at the D.C. FEMA headquarters after Category 3 Hurricane Idalia made landfall in Florida just days ago. During his appearance, Biden slurred his words, mumbling throughout his speech. Biden used the opportunity presented by the hurricane to peddle the Democratic climate change agenda. The president can be quoted as saying, "There are still some deniers out there in terms of whether or not climate change had anything to do with any of this, and we're going to need a whole hell of a lot more money." Oh, you need more money, Joe? And that's really all it is. That's the truth of it right there. He told the truth. We're going to need a lot more money. And I didn't know there were no hurricanes before climate change. I hadn't realized that. And I'll let you listen to him fumble here.
We're in a situation where, you know, we're, how can I say it? There's still some deniers out there in terms of whether or not climate change has anything to do with any of this. And we're going to need a whole hell of a lot more money to deal with emergency appropriations, to deal with all you're taking care of.
If you heard that clearly, I hope you did. I hope you heard that clearly. Zane says, someone once threatened to burn down my store, and I tried to tell the cops, and they denied it because he was homeless. And Stefan says they arrest people for helping. Oh, I read that. Yeah. And that is pretty effed up, Stefan. It is. And that's going on in a lot of cities around the country now. John says, I'm in the country, continue to stack food and ammo, keep to myself. I don't blame you. And Stefan says they wouldn't be saying that if they were homeless. Legend says Mitch McConnell is slipping into the future. And Stefan says they need to stop making all these old people's leaders. I mean, it wouldn't be so bad if he was still sharp. You know, like him or lump him, at least Trump is sharp. He can respond quickly. He speaks clearly. He doesn't need a teleprompter. He doesn't need someone telling him what to say. He doesn't need someone to escort him off the stage. So he's at least sharp. You got to give him that much. And who is it? The Jericho says, I will forever love your sarcasm and remarks. I try. Just speaking my mind. I know that's a crime now. And PV says, what an embarrassment to America. As I catch a few of these up, and Derp says, why has no one deposed these people? Who's going to do it and how? They've got all the money. They've got all the resources. They've got all the manpower, and they can easily control that manpower. These people will do anything they're told and say, I'm just doing my job, because that's how it is. And Monkey says Biden can stumble all of his words and do questionable things. Mainstream media will be silent and sleep. If Trump does anything slightly off, oh my God, Trump is unfit. That's about how it works. And Helter says that money he's asking for will now go to private jets to keep moving immigrants to woke states. But that's the thing. I mean, he can't resist. Again, this is the second time in a week, right? Because he did the same thing in Maui with his BS story lie about his kitchen fire, when he sat there and said his house burned down in 2003 or whenever the hell it was, 2008, I forget what the date was. It was in the early 2000s, and it turns out it was a small kitchen fire, and the fire department was there like 20 minutes, and all my house burned down, and I almost lost my cat and my Corvette. And these people lost everything, including family. And that you gotta compare yourself to them and sidetrack things and then blame the climate for it. And then he does the same thing here. These are people that are losing their shirts, and you're going to stand up there and start blithering about climate change and then tell them that you need more money. Where are you going to get it from? Tax the people who suffered under the hurricane? Because that's where it's going to come from. It's just more tax money. Oh, we need more money. We need more money. How about you be good stewards of the money you already have? Because you get a lot. The government gets more than they need, but they misuse it. They misappropriate it. They are not good stewards of your tax dollars. Taxation without representation. Again, any so-called patriot will tell you that that's what the country's founded on. Not necessarily, but that's the lore. And we're still getting taxation without representation. It's ridiculous. Zane says that's why it doesn't matter if we fight for our Second Amendment, it will still get taken away by force. And Nathan says Joe Biden reminds me of that old man from The Simpsons saying the gray old mare. Are you sure he doesn't remind you of the old man down the street on Family Guy? the one with the walker. And Zane says if the elite want it, they take it, pretty much. And that's the problem. That's the problem. That they could probably operate on half of the tax money that they collect if they spent it wisely. But they don't have to, and they know it. They can just do whatever the hell they want with it, and there will be no consequences and no oversight, and no one will challenge it. People will complain and complain and complain about it, but the people that are complaining about it have no power to do anything. What the hell are they going to do? Stefan says you're talking about Mr. Herbert. I can't remember the name. And Monkey says Herbert the pervert, the old guy from Family Guy. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Actually, he reminds me of the old preacher from Poltergeist 2. That's who I think of when I think of Joe. Do you remember when he manifested into a human form, the spirit in Poltergeist 2, if you've seen the film, and he catches the little girl in the shopping mall? Hello there, sweetheart. Are you lost? Does your mother know where you are? Oh, man. And Keisha says, thank you, and made a $10 donation to the channel. No, thank you, Keisha. Thank you very much. Again, goes a long way towards taking care of our felines and in our little makeshift cat shelter that we got going on. It's almost semi-professional now, as many as we're dealing with. And you see Dusty laying in the chair. Daniel is across the room there somewhere. There he is, sitting in the box. Hey, Daniel. And the kittens have all run off on me now, chasing each other around the room. Zane says we lose millions in tax revenue annually and nobody knows where it goes. You'll have a hard time figuring out where it goes. You'll have a really hard time figuring out where it goes. That's the problem. And then they try to hem you up. With all sorts of regulations and control, and it's extortion. I know people say, and I've said this many times, they say taxation is legalized theft. It's not theft. If someone steals from you, they do it once and they go away. If they keep coming back and you let them steal from you because you're scared that they're going to do something to you, that's extortion. That is extortion. If a local crime family was doing this to you, they would try to catch them up. They'd get them on RICO charges. But if your government does it, oh well, tough shit. And that's the bottom line. Zane says, and yet we still have national debt. Yeah, you have national debt because the money's not being spent right. They never spend the money right. They spend it all up and then ask for more. And then they'll get it because they'll vote to allow themselves to have more money, and then they'll just tax you more or regulate something else or create a new fee or some other crap like that. It's ridiculous. Stefan says, I would scream for my life if someone came up to me and said that. Yeah, and then he started singing. I think it was Rock of Ages, if I remember correctly, singing with the little girl holding her little hands. And then the mother comes along and she's like, yeah, my daughter. It's like, in many ways, Poltergeist 2 was better than the first one. More on Joe Biden. This is an example. I talk about these kind of stories on purpose, and this one comes from Fox News. I talk about these kind of stories on purpose because it's an example of them pretending to do something. Pretending to do something. It says Biden administration proposed rule to combat gun violence would require firearms dealers to conduct background checks. Reading on the article really quickly here, because you already know what I'm going to say. A proposed rule from the Biden administration aimed at combating rising gun violence across the U.S. could require thousands more firearms dealers to run background checks if approved. Last year, Biden signed the most significant gun control bill in nearly 30 years, which incentivized states to pass red flag laws and expand background checks for 18 to 21-year-olds. The bipartisan Safer Communities Act. I hate those titles. They're oxymorons. Safer Communities Act. My ass. Which was created to prevent mass shootings in the U.S. And keep in mind, mass shootings constitutes 3 people. even if you were winged, is it 3? I think if 3 people are winged, even with a bullet or injured in some other way, it counts. Was passed through the House with a 234 to 193 vote and 14 Republicans crossing party lines. The bill was then sent to Biden's desk to be signed. And yeah, have you never heard of the Brady bill? It says incentivize states to pass red flag laws, combating gun violence, requiring thousands more firearms dealers to run background checks. What firearms dealers are not already doing this? The Brady bill was signed when? In 1993? Spent 30 years they've been doing background checks. 30 years. They used to have to call them in on the phone, remember? Way back in the day. Come on. Got a visitor. They used to have to call them in on the telephone. And before they had the computers. This is just pretending to do something, and it makes me sick. It makes me sick when they do that kind of crap. It's like, yeah, we're going to require background checks. They've been doing it for 3 decades under the Brady bill. Say hello. Hi, kitty. You want to get down now? You came here to play. You didn't come here to get attention, did you? It's all right. I'll let you go. And let's catch up a few comments here. John says taxation is extortion. Yeah, see? And D'Lo says Sleepy Joe is at it again. Jericho says Boston Massacre was only by about 3 or 4 people. Zane says violence intervention programs curb more violence than any red flag law ever did. The Jericho says schools made it out to seem like it was a civil war. And Fluke Man says people work for the national and local government should have their pay, bonuses, stock, and shares, and how much tax they pay made public, then let political parties accuse each other of tax evasion. Dragon says this administration appears to be pushing the citizenry of this country to the box that we should avoid the most of the boxes that Frederick Douglass spoke of: jury box, ballot box, and cartridge box. And John says they want to take law-abiding people's weapons away. And that's about what it boils down to, because they want to make an example, but they'll make an example out of 100,000 people to pretend to persecute one. Because it's not an example if that person gets jammed up, because nobody sees that. And Zane says violence is more about community compliance and gang culture than about guns being the problem. And Urban says when it comes to gun control, Canada is close to prohibition. Guns are basically banned here, but people still have to play out the paper charade. Yeah, a lot of red tape, a lot of BS. I know it's been pretty bad in Canada for a while. And I'll give you one more about Biden, and then we'll move on, because this is kind of silly. I know that the news wants to talk about this. But what do you expect her to do? And who is this? If I can get this to come up. Keisha says, do you remember the scene in Taxi Driver where the guy bought all those guns by an illegal seller? Yeah. Because he was in New York. He couldn't get a firearm even then. It would have been a nightmare for him to get a legal weapon. Get out of my teacup. Come on. Come on, dear. Move. I'm not mad, but get out of my teacup. And of course you see here, hello dear. All right, okay. Distraction time. That is Jean-Pierre. This is a Fox News article, and it says KJP dinged for insisting Biden has done more than anyone else to secure the border, the Gaslight Award of 2023, according to Fox News. One more comment here. Helter says if they try this nonsense, it'll end badly for all who come to enforce it. The Biden administration will have a hard time enforcing this. And there she is, hired because of her gender politics. Social media users couldn't believe, I'm sure they could, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre when she claimed on Thursday that President Biden has done, quote, more to secure the border than anyone else. Jean-Pierre was asked about Biden's immigration policies after it was reported that he did not meet with New York Governor Kathy Hochul regarding the migrant crisis in her state. He has also not appeared to respond to growing Democrat criticism and requests to better secure the border to lessen the flow of migrants. And he did ditch Kathy Hochul, and that's a whole nother big story. And the reason he gave was because he's too busy to talk to her. Quote, look, the president has done what he came from here. What? Look, the president has done what he can from here. Okay, I read that wrong. From the federal government, from the White House to put forth and manage our border in a safe and humane way to respect the dignity of every human, as he says all the time, and making sure that our communities are safe. And you have seen him do that, Jean-Pierre said. Now, we all know that isn't true. We all know that that's just lip service. Sure, it's true that he has said those things, but have they been executed in practice? Really, no. But should it surprise anybody that Jean-Pierre is going to sit there and defend him? That's her job. So everybody's like, I can't believe she said that. Of course. What is she going to do? Go out there in front of the press corps and say, yeah, Biden's a moron and he hasn't done anything he said he was going to do, and he's a complete failure, and our borders are overrun. Sorry, folks. She isn't going to do that. She'll never work a day again in her life. She's going to say exactly what she's told to say, and she's going to stick to it, and she's going to read her script, and she's going to be a good little puppet, because that's how she keeps her job. That's what she was hired to do. That's what she was hired to do. Catching up some of the comments, Nathan says, also in Canada, you get arrested for wearing a stormtrooper costume out in front of a Star Wars themed restaurant. Do you? I hadn't heard that. And PV says, I can't believe the amount of junk that comes out of reporting nowadays. What happened to real investigative reporting? Every story is manipulative these days. And that's why I talked about the monkeys. If some of you remember several weeks back, there was a ring of people who were torturing monkeys to death live on YouTube and Facebook for donations. And they were making a lot of money too. And some journalists from the BBC followed it up for a few months and caught up with them, and actually it led to arrests and everything. That's the first solid journalism I've seen on any level for a long time. And Zane says the news has always been manipulated ever since its inception. And Helter says this generation of journalists, use that term loosely, have completely lost their ethics. It's obvious that they see themselves as part of a one-party system holding to the party line or the narrative. Exactly, because they want to keep their jobs. That's what it's all about. You find what you're looking for back there? Oh, everybody's back there. Hey, guys, look at this. I hadn't realized that, way too far. 1, 2, all twisted around each other there, see? There we go. I didn't know they snuck in here. And then there's Dusty in the chair. And so I got 5 cats in the room. 5 cats in the room. And Zane says that in the 1800s, the term yellow journalism came into existence. Yeah, because it was manipulated them as well, but we still had actual journalism in many cases, like the revelation of Watergate, the revelation of the Pentagon Papers. Every once in a while, something real would come up, but you don't see it anymore. Dragon says journalists ignore obvious facts and stick to their narrative with a grin while lying constantly. When caught and exposed, they do one of these things, double down on the lie or screech insults. And Keisha says, according to whichever news station that you watch on TV, you can tell which president they hate or like, which president they've been told to hate or like, because they're always following a narrative. Always following a narrative as we move along. I should have put this one after the Home Depot story. This comes from CBS television. Pair of suspects arrested for connection to retail theft ring. And the reason I'll tell you why I wanted to show this story here in a minute. Look at all those cosmetics. I guess this is all stuff that they stole. Police have arrested 2 people in connection with a large organized retail theft ring that has plagued several businesses throughout Los Angeles County in recent weeks. According to the California Highway Patrol, the suspects, a man and a woman in their 40s, were arrested after an investigation revealed they were part of a theft ring that involved nearly $200,000 worth of stolen goods. The investigation consisted of members from CHP, CHIPS, you remember the show CHIPS, and Los Angeles Police Department as part of the newly formed Los Angeles Organized Retail Crime Task Force. They needed another task force to do the job they should have been doing anyways. The arrests were made on Tuesday when investigators targeted an undisclosed, quote, fence location in downtown Los Angeles where the stolen merchandise was being sold. And then they go on here to basically tell you what a fence is. I'm sure you all know what they mean by a fence. Somebody that you sell stolen goods to at a steep discount because you can't get rid of it yourself. And that's all cosmetics there. Small high price ticket items. HBA is a great place to shoplift. That was always a big target. HBA, health and beauty aids, was always a big target whenever I worked in retail. That's why they set it up so that the rows face the pharmacy, so the pharmacists can watch even though they're too busy to. The reason that I wanted to show this is because while I know shoplifting is on the rise across the country and in Europe, there's a lot of that going on. In my experience, the greatest level of theft has always been an inside job. And this particular situation, these people were working with individuals from within the stores. I don't know if it says it in this article. A total of 13,906 stolen items were recovered with an approximate retail loss of $198,000 to the victims. But yeah, here it is. The items being sold at the store were stolen with the assistance of retail loss prevention personnel. So the Department 100, the D100 employees whose jobs it is to protect the stores, were setting the scenario up for these people to come in and steal this merchandise. They were working with people from within the store locations. And I believe it was CVS and Victoria. Yeah, here it is. Victoria's Secret and CVS retailers. And again, that's why I was making that point that in my experience, large scale theft from stores was always an inside job. Always an inside job. And a few more comments here. Zane says he exposed the deforestation of protected area in Australia by politicians. And I guess he's talking about Friendly Jordy, the reporter. Friendly Jordies. And Zane says he's one of the best journalists of our time. And Urban says, I saw a young teenager around 12 years old shoving around 50 pairs of fake eyelashes into her backpack. Then out in the open parking lot, she handed everything over to a much older person. Yeah. And Zane says, fact, employees steal more than consumers. And that's kind of my point. While we're going on and on about this with the shoplifting on the rise and flash mob thefts and things like that, again, in my own personal experience, employees were always a bigger problem, a much bigger problem than were actual customers who would come in and steal. And that's how it is. That's the way it is. And I wanted to share that as we move along here. And we talk about the FBI, female body inspectors, FBI. This is from the Daily Caller. And this is something that I've talked about before. And it's nice to see it revealed in the media for all the good it does, because nothing will be done to correct this. FBI misleads Americans about how often armed citizens stop active shooters, gun violence experts claims. That is true. That is true because the statistics are out there about people with carrying permits or people who carry legally in their state stopping criminals. It happens every day. It happens quite often. And you don't see that in the news. You don't see that in the media. And the statistics are out there. And I've shown the statistics. I know I did a couple of videos a few months back where I actually showed a couple of the statistics from that. It happens more often than you might think, or how often someone is shot in a self-defense situation during a violent crime or during a home invasion. They don't like to show you those numbers, but they'll talk about shootings. And they'll lump everything together, and you think everything involving a shooting is a crime, and it's not. So they do hide this. As we get into the article, and again, this is from the Daily Caller. Former senior advisor for research and statistics for the U.S. Department of Justice, John R. Lott, I bet he got picked on in school, claims the FBI has misreported how many armed citizens have stopped active shooters. Lott had the task of evaluating the FBI's active shooting reports. He found the Bureau had missed and misidentified cases regarding armed citizens stopping active shooters, Lott reported. The former senior advisor claims the correct rate of armed citizens stopping active shooters is almost 8 times higher than the FBI's claim of 14 of 302 from 2014 to 2022, while the FBI claims that just 4.6% of active shootings were stopped by law-abiding citizens carrying guns. The percentage that I found was actually 35.7%. I am more confident that we have identified a higher share of recent cases, and our figure for 2022 was even higher at 41.3%. That's significant. The CPRC's numbers tell a different story. Out of 440 active shooter incidents from 2014 to 2022, an armed citizen stopped 157. We also found that the FBI had misidentified 5 cases, usually because the person who stopped the attack was incorrectly identified as a security guard, because they don't count those. Lott identified that a portion of the misreporting comes from a result of the FBI not differentiating between law-abiding citizens stopping attacks where guns are banned and where they are allowed. Quote, in places where law-abiding citizens are allowed to carry firearms, the percentage of active shootings that were stopped is 51% for 2022. That figure is a remarkable 63.5. Now, you have to imagine that they're misidentifying and misplacing those numbers on purpose. I don't think that's an accident. I think they're doing it deliberately so that they can continue to mislead people into thinking that anything citizen plus firearm equals evil. And that's not the case. And you should have a right to defend yourself. You should have your right to defend yourself with equal force of whoever is attacking you. Period. Because you don't know what's coming. You don't know what's coming. If somebody has a desire to arm themselves to defend themselves, they should be able to. And this is shady. This is shady. They're skewing these numbers on purpose so that those numbers can't be used against them in that type of an argument. Well, hey, what about this statistic? What about this? Because this isn't a poll. This is actual statistical numbers. This is how many people were shot by an armed citizen defending themselves or someone else in a violent confrontation. And those numbers are a lot higher, evidently, than what the FBI tells you. Zane says, I have no sympathy for criminals who are shot by the victim. I totally get where you're coming from. Helter says the FBI will say anything to maintain their monopoly on violence. Armed citizens are more effective and they don't want to look incompetent. Yeah. And Rodney says the powers that be want us helpless, afraid, and obedient. You couldn't be more right. And Zane says that's why I'm going to try to get my CCW in California. That's tough in California, man. I know it's not easy out there, but do the best you can. Do the best you can because you deserve it. You deserve the right to be able to defend yourself, defend your property, defend your loved ones. I don't care what they say. I don't care what they say. Because you don't know what somebody's going to do. There are crazy, crazy people out there. And the more that they are allowed to get away with the kind of things that they've been doing, the more they're going to be encouraged to keep doing them and get worse and worse and worse. Oh, well, everyone else does it. Everybody else gets away with it. It inspires people who have evil inclinations. And yeah, I would rather be prepared. It, like the old adage goes, I'd rather have it and not use it than need it and not have it, because odds are you may never need it. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have it. You may never need that donut that you have in your trunk. You may never actually get a flat, but I bet you got a spare tire in your trunk. And I know there's a big difference between having a flat on the highway and shooting somebody, but it's the same concept. Bams says you should have the right to defend yourself whatever way you see fitting. And D'Lo says the laws suck here in California. Yeah, they suck in a lot of places, D'Lo. And Bertrat says even in Australia we can arm ourselves, we just can't carry. Yeah, I know they give you a hard time though, don't they? I know that they've been really, really getting kind of totalitarianistic in Australia over the last few years. It's not the Australia that I knew because I was in Australia in the 80s, and it's changed quite a bit. I wouldn't want to go there now, quite frankly. Dragon says, I wonder how many successful defensive use of firearm instances have gone unreported because showing or presenting the firearm was enough to stop the threat with no shots fired. Yeah, and if you pull and you are intimidating enough and look like you know what you're doing, sometimes you could back somebody down and you don't have to hurt them. Zane says the native Australian tribes can carry. And the Jericho says it's have it and not need it, then need it and not have it. Okay, I was close. I paraphrased, but yeah, you're right. That is the correct phrasing. As we shuffle along here. And speaking of overreach of government authority, this is from the USA Today, reported by the USA Today in New York. And we'll catch up one more here from Rodney. It says most semi-auto firearms were confiscated here in New Zealand. Strangely, the criminals didn't hand theirs in, and nor would they. Why would they? Why would they? Only law-abiding citizens would do that. Again, laws are for who? They are for the law-abiding. They are for the obedient. Again, this is a USA Today article. It says New York Police Department to use drones to monitor backyard parties this weekend, spurring privacy concerns. You don't have any privacy in New York. Who told you that? Who lied to you? Who lied to you? Getting into the article, New York City. Those attending outdoor parties or barbecues in New York City this weekend may notice an uninvited guest looming over their festivities, a police surveillance drone. Yeah, they've been using those out there. The New York City Police Department plans to pilot the unmanned aircraft in response to complaints about large gatherings, including private events over Labor Day weekend, officials said Thursday. Quote, if a caller states there's a large crowd, a large party in a backyard, we're going to be utilizing our assets to go up and check out the party. Kaz Daughtry, the assistant New York Police Department commissioner, said at a press conference. You never used to hear complaints about that in cities like this until during the pandemic when people were getting in trouble for gatherings. So because you weren't allowed to gather. And so nosy neighbors and busybodies who wanted to hem up their neighbors because they didn't like them or whatever their excuse was would call them in, and the police would come up and break up their Sweet 16 party or their bar mitzvah or whatever the hell was going on. Their birthday party, the neighbor's birthday party. Oh, I don't like them. Watch what I do, and calling it in and getting them in trouble. You never used to hear about that. Now, even though the lockdowns are technically over, New York didn't let go of this. They didn't let go of this. Immediate backlash, continuing into the article. The plan drew immediate backlash from privacy and civil liberties advocates, raising questions about whether such drones used use violated existing laws for police surveillance. Quote, it's a troubling announcement and it flies in the face of the Post Act, said Daniel Schwartz, a privacy and technology strategist at the New York Civil Liberties Union, referring to a 2020 city law that requires the NYPD to disclose its surveillance tactics. Deploying drones in this way is a sci-fi inspired scenario. Yeah, okay. That's what they do now. As we catch up some more of these comments. And here is Nathan. He says, to clarify, the girl wearing the stormtrooper costume, and that was a comment from a while back, was arrested because the police thought the toy gun she was carrying was real. No, they didn't. You know it ain't. You know that that stormtrooper blaster rifle is not a real gun. They just wanted to make people afraid. That was done as a show of force. That was done to send a message. They could look at that and know it wasn't real. And even after going out there and looking and saying, oh, okay, this is just a prop, they could leave it alone. They didn't have to arrest her. Keisha says, I saw a video where the neighbor called the police because their barbecue smoke was drifting in her yard. Urban says, no drones allowed in Maui either. And Jericho says, barbecue smoke, that's such an HOA move. Yeah. And Zane says, New Zealand, they need to get better rights. We need to get better rights everywhere. And Bertrat says, rather be looking at it than looking for it. That works for me. And Dragon says, drones with loudspeaker. Sir, that hamburger was undercooked, but the burger down. Health code violation. Rat burgers. Who ate a rat burger? Who ate a rat burger in a movie? See if anybody remembers. Zane says, I hope you guys have good luck getting your rights back. That would be you're talking revolution levels at that point. Fluke Man says, whatever YouTuber was talking about home invasion, a guy said having a gun is a good idea for self-defense. But one of the women says, I don't want him to die just for breaking into my house. He asked, what if half dozen me murdered her boyfriend? What would she do then? She was lost for words. And Helter says, another step closer to pocket-sized drone cameras whizzing around public spaces, keeping the peace. America, the big brother who constantly keeping tabs on everybody. Yes, we are so free. Indeed. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. Nathan says, good point. And Bam's got it. You got the kudos point for the day. That was Demolition Man. Sylvester Stallone ate the rat burger. And Helter got that too. And Booger says, I ate one. It's a damn good movie. And Fluke Man made a correction. He said half dozen men. Yeah, you don't know what that person's going to. I don't want him to die because he broke into my house. You don't know what he's going to do when he gets in there. You don't know what somebody's intention. That's bold. That is bold to bust into someone's home while they're home, knowing that the people are in there. There are people, sneak thieves, who get off on knowing someone was in the house and they don't intend any harm, but there are people who want to hurt somebody and they're looking for an excuse, and you don't know which is which. You don't know which is which. Plus, they're invading your space. You're protecting yourself, your property. You might have children. You might have a spouse. There's a lot to consider there. I'm not above tagging somebody who breaks into the house. I mean, seriously. Every state should have a castle law. Every state should have a castle. We shouldn't even need a castle law. It should just be a given. Don't break in. Zane says, Australia's in chat. Do you guys know how to use a woomera? See if anybody can answer that before we sign off. As we get close to the hour, again, we are on Coffee Talk. That is at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, or Prepper University on YouTube, or fistfulofradio.com. Fistfulofradio.com. which is a podcasting service out of Atlanta. I almost said Australia. I'm still looking at Zane's comment. Out of Atlanta, where I can be found Monday through Thursday at 4 and Friday at noon. So please do check that out. Please do check that out. Thanks to everybody who helps out the channel, makes donations, or uses the GoFundMe or the PayPal or even the P.O. box. People send us pet food and things like that for the strays that we take care of. And you see I've got 3 of them behind me there. There's 2 on the desk and 1 in the chair. Keeping me company as I prattle on. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Very much appreciated. Hope you got something out of the conversation. Hope you enjoyed that. And we should be doing this again on Monday, and we'll see you then.